All right, this video, I'm going to go over a little bit of the Onshape interface and walk you through creating the first part. Feel free to um, rewind, skip, pause, whatever as we go through. All right, so I have Onshape open. When you open your first part, your first file in Onshape, your screen should look a lot like this. Over on the left-hand side, you have your three view planes. The object is in a three-dimensional space. So you have a top, front, and a right view. Across the top, right now, I have my 3D features. And as I move my mouse across them, it'll highlight the name of it. If I leave my mouse there for a second, it'll tell me what it is. Anything in Onshape with an arrow means there are more options. All right. Generally in Onshape, you have two environments you're going to work in, your sketch environment and then your features environment. You also have, you should use a mouse for this. Your scroll wheel will zoom in and out. Pushing and holding your scroll wheel will move the item around. Right clicking and Onshape will rotate it. You also have the view cube in the corner that you can use to move your object around. So let's get started. We're going to do the first Onshape part here. I'm going to show you how to create the shape, how to use some constraints, add this little feature, the dimensions, all that good stuff. All right, so I've already downloaded it. I find it's going to be much easier to work with if you've downloaded the and to a separate window rather than trying to view it in Schoology. So when I look at this part and I compare it to my Onshape screen, I notice that the orientation of the three kind of views, this is the front view, this being the side view, and then across this way being the top view, kind of goes along with these three things. So when I start, I want to start in the plane that matches up to the most descriptive kind of plane of this part. So this shape here, I can look at that and I see it, that I'm going to just draw this and give it some thickness. The other two, just there's some features, but it's not exactly, I'm going to have to do a lot more steps. Okay. So I'm basically going to get this done in like 2 steps. Okay. So I'm going to start off with this feature here. So this is going to be on my front plane. So I can add a sketch to my front plane either by highlighting and right clicking and click new sketch. I can also click sketch and then click on the surface. All right, either one will do. And when you've clicked on that, you'll see a sketch plane that is in line with what you've clicked on. Okay, so I have sketch 1 there. And I have also noticed that my tools across the top have changed. So now I have sketch tools instead of feature tools. All right, so across here are my main tools. Then I have another grouping here, and these are patterns and other modifiers, my dimension tab, and then all of my constraints. Right. To make this part, you might find it helpful to make your screen side by side. You can adjust that proportion by clicking the little kind of this bar that pops up in the middle. Or if you don't like that on your laptop screen or whatever, if you hit Alt-Tab, it will cycle back and forth between the two things. So if you want to just take a quick look for a dimension or a shape and come back, you can hit Alt-Tab on your keyboard. All right. So I've started on my front surface. I'm going to draw this shape. So this dot right here represents my origin point. It's the intersection of the 3 planes. It also creates a fixed point for me to work off of. So I'm going to start from there. So I'm going to draw from that point. I'm going to make it here. You could make it that corner. It doesn't really matter. It could be here. But I'm going to draw this shape as I see. All right. So I'm going to use my line command. You can use the command or hit L. I'm going to start, make sure that I'm clicking on this. And then as I go up, you'll notice that next to my line I drew, I have a vertical line. That tells me that that line is vertical. If I'm off a little bit, that goes away. You'll also see it kind of snap. As I move it close, it sort of jumps to vertical because I think that's what I want to do. So I'm going to do that. When I go this way, I have a horizontal shape. Come up, it's vertical, over, horizontal, this way. All right, so I'm just creating it. Here now, this is telling me perpendicular. So notice that that line right there is yellow. So it's telling me these two are perpendicular, which is fine. It's just a different way to represent that relationship. I'm going to come down. When I get down to the bottom, you'll see a yellow dashed line connected back to the origin. This tells me those are going to line up. And I have two constraints on my mouse there, a vertical and a horizontal. That's telling me that the line is vertical and the constraint to that is horizontal. And I want that. So I'm going to allow that to happen. All right, then I'm going to come over, start to draw this shape. Notice that when I come over here, it tries to attach it to that point. When I look at my sketch, they don't look like they line up. So I don't want to add that in there. If I do, that's going to create a problem later. Okay, so I'm going to come back here and go kind of like what it looks like on the picture, back down, and then over. All right, once I have created the shape and it is fully enclosed, it'll turn gray. All right. Over here, these two lines are black. That means they have some geometric constraint to them. This line is black. The rest of them are blue. My goal is to get all of the lines to be black. That will tell me that my whole object has been fully constrained. All right. So before I go and start adding dimensions, I'm going to just kind of look at my part first. And I noticed that there are some relationships between these things. So not just those horizontal, vertical, and perpendiculars that were dropped in there, but I also have these two little legs are 0.5. Therefore, they are equal. Okay. I also have a 1-inch measurement here, a 1-inch measurement there that I could use if I wanted to. I see a line, this extension line that comes from this corner to show me that this is 1 inch tall, goes through this line as well. So I know those two features are lined up with each other, which on mine, I did not do. Okay, so I'm going to go back over and I'm going to split my screen. It's a little bit easier to see what I'm working off of. And the only thing that does is it makes my constraint menu smaller. So it's here. Yours might show coincident right now. And again, if you hover over them, it'll tell you kind of what they are. So I'm going to click on equal, and I'm going to make these two legs equal to each other. Right? And then I also see like this is a 1-inch ledge. This is 2 inches. My whole distance is 4. So therefore this is equal. If you don't figure that out ahead of time, you can just add the dimensions. It'll do it later. But I'm going to add that. I'm going to make this shelf and that shelf equal to each other. It kind of kicks those out. All right. And then I'm going to line these 2 points up. So to do that, they are horizontal to each other. Right. So if I click on this point and I click on that point, they're now horizontal. If I move them up and down, they move together. Okay. So I get a couple of constraints in there where things are starting to move with each other. It's going to be less dimensions I have to add. Constraints are good for something that you're making that has already been drawn. They're also really good if you're trying to set certain relationships when you're designing something from scratch. So when you're designing like something that's going to hook onto the Vex part, there's a lot of relationships with those squares and stuff like that you're going to want to do. Okay. So once I have some of those set up, it'll make it easier. Now I'm going to start to add dimensions. In my drawing, I have kind of the dimensions are all rotated around a little bit. So dimensions going this way are going to show me width. Dimensions that are arrows are going this way are going to show me height. Dimensions going kind of back at that back angle are going to show me depth measurements. So I'm going to kind of pick one and go from there. So I'm going to pick the heights and grab these heights so I can see I've got a couple here. And then I got something over here, but that's a different feature. So I'm not going to worry about those. So I'm going to kind of do these here. All right. So I'm going to click on my dimension icon. You can also hit D on the keyboard. So this is 1.5. I'm just clicking on the line and dragging over. This is 1 inch. Okay. And then this here is 0.5. Another way you can dimension rather than clicking on the line is you can click on the two lines that make up that location and put it in that way as well. Okay, so there's my heights. You'll notice that all of my horizontal lines are black. So now, right, if I move this, I cannot move this line up and down anymore. I can't move this point up and down, only left and right. Okay, so that's my next set of dimensions I need. So D for dimension. I have that 0.5. We made these equal to each other already. So I'm going to just add my 0.5 there. If I was to then go through and add 0.5 here, you'll notice it turns gray. And that's telling me I already have that. And that can become a problem later. So I don't want any of those. So I'm going to undo. If you're familiar with Inventor, Inventor would yell at you and tell you you can't do that and not allow you to put that in there. All right, so that's 0.5. I don't know the dimension of this, but I do know that the whole length is 4. So from here to here, right? So if I click D for dimension, from there to there is 4. And it locks all those in, because if this is 0.5 and this is 0.5, this is 4, then that has to be the remaining 3 inches. All right, so now I look up here. I have my 2 inches across the top. And because I had set these equal to each other, if this is 2, these 2 lines are equal. They have to be 1 inch if the whole length is 4. If I again go in and try to add that dimension, it'll allow me to, but it's that lighter gray, and that's a bad idea. All right, so now everything is turned black. And if I go through, let me go back into my sketch. All right, if I out of my commands, right, and I try to drag anything, it's not going to allow me to click and drag anything. It just kind of sits there. So we finish the sketch either by right-clicking and hit confirm, or clicking on the green check mark. Either way, it will end your sketch, and then your toolbar changes. All right, so the most common thing you're going to use is going to be extrude. Extrude gives a shape, a volume. So when I click on extrude and I click on that, it now gives it a 3-dimensional volume. This is my first part, so this is a new solid. We can also later, we'll see add, remove, and you probably won't do anything with intersect, but there's other options there. All right, I have what I'm doing, so that's the face. I've got some options here we'll get into later. And then I have my depth. So we look front to back. This is 2.5 going that way. So my depth is 2.5. If I just kind of click into the white space, it'll add that. And it doesn't really matter for what we're doing, which direction it goes. All right, so we click that in place, and now we have our basic shape. So the next thing we have to do is add this little shelf. So this shelf kind of comes out of this side feature. So I'm going to add my sketch to that feature. So I'm going to right click and hit new sketch. You can also click sketch and then click on the feature, right? You can see the plane that it puts on there. So I'm going to right click, highlight, right click, and new sketch. Okay, so now I'll move my view cube over so I'm looking right at it. This is a rectangle, so instead of drawing 4 lines and worrying about all those relationships, I'm going to use a corner rectangle and just pop that in place like that. And then when I have a feature that's kind of floating, I have to size the feature, so that's how big it is, and then I have to locate the feature, so where it is. So I'm going to start off by locating the feature first. So this feature is 0.5 inches from this edge. So again, kind of see where we're at. This line right here is this line there. So we add that in, and that's 0.5. So now that line's turned black. And then they've located it 0.75 down from this edge right here. You can draw in 3-dimensional like this in the isometric view. Some students find that helpful. I've been doing stuff in CAD so long, and to me it's kind of almost confusing, and my brain sort of automatically makes these connections after a whole long time of doing this. So, all right, so I click on those 2 lines, 0.75. All right, and it's kind of squished this, so that's going to be maybe an issue when I try to size it. So 1.5 wide. And then I'm not going to be able to click on that shape right there. I could click on these 2 lines separately, or I could just zoom in. And then that is 0.25. So you can see the little arrows with the line off of it tells me that that's 0.25. So again, now my rectangle has turned black. If for some reason your rectangle is not black, then you're missing a dimension, or you might, if you didn't draw a rectangle and you drew lines, you might not be horizontal or perpendicular or something like that. Okay, so we check that, we're good. Finish my sketch. Click on what I want to extrude. So this comes out 0.75. So away we go, 0.75. And it looks kind of weird, but it's because my angle is not the same. So I'll click on this little box right here, and now that looks the same. So those 2 features are set, and my first thing is done.